about what's going on with security forces, it looks like the regime is short on people to confront the protesters. Is it a sign simply that they're overstretched, or does it mean that the trained security forces are no longer trusted? In the past, you're thinking of the big protests in Iran, it was after an election, it was like hundreds of thousands of people all in Tehran, a concentrated thing. This is bubbling up all over, and it creates a strain on the security services who are asked to go into the streets and confront the protesters because they're everywhere. They got to move here, there in this city, here, there in another. You're seeing things you don't normally see in response to protests. You know, they're suiting up children in riot gear. They look like dressed up for Halloween or something, but they're placed on the street. It kind of reeks of desperation and understaffing. There has been also recruitment in high schools. The speculation is the regime is going to areas, neighborhoods, and schools where they know that they can rely on people who will support the regime and that their trained and staffed people are maybe a little iffy. If you're in the security forces in Iran, you're not allowed to have any ink on your skin. You can't have a tattoo. So to have a photo of, in police uniform, and you can see he's got a tattoo in a visible place on his wrist, that's seen as significant. Like, this guy isn't a regular cop. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel. They're bringing people in who wouldn't normally be accepted as police officers, which means they're shorthanded. There's an elite force that wears, they're like ninja. They go like, that's not what we're looking at in that photo. Those are like maybe Basiji or some kind of regular guys. They're clearly kind of tired and resting, but they're wearing masks, which means they don't want to be identified, which means what? Who's going to, no, the state isn't going to prosecute them. They're there to enforce the state's will. So they're worried about being recognized. You're also seeing circulated by protesters and dissidents images of plainclothes people, especially security officials, who are being videoed as they're supervising, and then they're being threatened on social media saying, "You're a dead man walking." It's clear that there are more irregular forces, more untrained forces. Doesn't mean that that the regular forces are not trusted anymore, because they might not be willing to shoot a lot of people in the street. You're seeing protests in places you never saw protests before. Places where the militia people would come from, the backbone of the regime in terms of the population. So if they're actually becoming the protesters, or if their neighborhood is producing a significant number of protesters, it tells you something's going on in that society, and that this regime may be being undermined at its base. It may be losing its base.